like there's no tomorrow.
Welcome to the Bingking podcast.
All right, notes. Okay. Hey everyone, I have David here with me. David, how are you?
I'm very well.
This is the first time you're on video, right?
It is, yes.
You've done the podcast a couple times.
Yes.
The audio version, but
Yes.
I've upgraded a little bit to video.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's like being in. It's like being in the internet. You know.
All right. Well, today I brought you because, well, one, I actually really wanted to do a podcast with you, mostly about the transference from Dan DK, who kind of started the EDH chat here in Shanghai with all of the expats, and then it transferred to you. What does that feel like?
Oh, heavy is the head that wears the crown. No, it's perfectly fine, to be honest. Dan asked me to take over when he was leaving. I said yes, and I just my responsibilities basically entail posting weekly messages, encouraging people to come and play, and dealing with the occasional miscreant who's mean to people, which doesn't happen very often because it's a very nice group.
Do you find that you get like a little bit of pressure from that group? I have a couple groups, and I occasionally do feel like there's pressure to keep it active. There's pressure for sure if there's an actual offline element that, you know, you want people to keep coming. You don't want to let it die. Like, for sure, there's a little bit of pressure.
For sure, yeah. I would say so. I think making sure that people feel welcome and want to come. Definitely, I feel pressure to welcome new players.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I quite like new players, so it's good. That's a good pressure.
Right.
But making sure that if people are coming, they've got a game, they're not waiting around for ages, that people are meant to feel included. And also sort of trying to maintain in some ways trying to maintain a meta where everyone's having fun rather than leaving frustrated. So I try to.
That's difficult. That's not easy.
Yeah, and there are some days where I get frustrated as well, and I
Right.
have to keep myself in check or fail to do so. And there are some times as well when, you know, people come and they maybe didn't have a good time, or they felt as though they were in a pod where the power level was too high, or they just didn't enjoy it. So there are some pressures from that. Whereas I'm in a draft group as well, and for that, I just show up, play draft. I don't have to worry about who's in what order. There was one time when I volunteered to take over for the day, and I found that very stressful.
That's very stressful.
Just making sure who's playing who, and it's a pre-release thing. I found that stressful. But EDH generally, it's quite chill, and the group's quite self-regulating. And also, I'm waffling on a bit here, but also there are people in the group who also have their own things which help. So we've got one member of our group who organises tournaments, for example.
Trev. Yeah.
And that
helps a lot.
Yeah, and so that's his thing, and it's great. It encourages people to come along, and people always enjoy those events.
Yeah.
And you know, there's just little things like that.
But I think, like, I always use Yiming as like kind of the classical difficult new player, right? And I've carefully tracked his path, and a lot of new players come in, usually from 60 card formats, that have quite a high power level, and then you have to kind of slowly ramp them down, right? Yeah. And usually they'll come in, they'll net deck something off of whatever EDH Rec or whatever they found, and then it's let's say around a 6 or 7, and then it ramps up. So their first thought is, oh, this is not that good. I'm gonna go up in power, and then they'll stay at that high power level for a little bit, and the meta kind of keeps bringing them back down. Ideally. And I've watched Yiming go through that slowly, albeit, but eventually has come down in power level.
Yeah.
And a lot of new players, that kind of disrupts your meta. Each time a new player comes in, ramps up their deck, that disrupts the whole kind of casual feel of the meta.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, we're all Magic players. We're all strategizing about how to make our decks better.
Correct.
But I think a useful tip that I've given people, and that a tip I remind myself of as well, is try to making your deck make for better games rather than for more power.
Right.
So, for example, Phyrexia's come out recently. It's a very strong set.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really strong cards in there. There are cards in that set that would slot into any deck. Similarly, Dominaria Remastered came out. It's a reprint of all the tutors.
Yep.
There's a lot of tutors you could slot into your decks. And you've just got to kind of ask yourself, like, are the upgrades you're making to the deck going to make for better and more interesting games or not? And I think that is quite challenging for Magic players who are new as well, because of course you want your deck to do better, you want to win more, you want to enjoy all of that, and you know everything about it is sort of telling you that you should be strategizing and optimizing, as well as the dear old folks at Wizards themselves, who who occasionally are known to power creep ever so slightly,
right?
And content creators who focus on power rather than nuance for the most part. So it is a bit of a battle, but ultimately, if you're booking yourself a day of Magic time for yourself, at the end of the day when you're going home, what are you going to look back on? Are you going to look back on smashing people and being...
Some people do.
Some people do, yeah. But we ship them off to Hangzhou, don't we? No, some people do, and some people don't.
Right.
And I think our group in Shanghai is quite special, I think, in that a lot of people who join the group compare it to home metas or so on, and they say it's really fun, it's really friendly, and the games are enjoyable, whereas they go back to their hometown Magic store and what are you playing? Oh, I'm playing Urza. What are you playing? Oh, I'm playing Atraxa.
Right.
Oh, I'm playing Prosper. We've not even seen a Prosper deck.
Oh, we had one. Casey had one.
Did he?
Yes, Casey had one very briefly.
Oh, he did, yeah, but it wasn't terrible.
It wasn't terrible.
It was quite good, yeah.
And I like that we kind of all self-regulate. I think that's quite important.
Yeah.
But again, like when you have a couple of new players, especially when it's more than one, right? I think when Yiming came in, he was relatively new, and he was the new player for a little bit.
Yeah.
So it was just one person. When a new group kind of comes into your group, like 3, 4, 5 players, then you kind of have like a merging of culture, a merging of power levels, and it takes much longer. It's not a bad thing. I actually think, everyone needs to kind of taste, that's how they're playing. This is how we're playing.
Yeah.
And everyone needs to kind of balance each other out. It takes a little bit more time, but it's also rough. Especially as the de facto kind of guy that's owning the group, it's difficult, I would say. And I don't know if you take that as like your responsibility or not. Or is it more of like kind of a group thing?
I would say it's more of a group thing.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, like, the person organising it can't be the one to have all the feelings.
I don't think so either.
And especially if the person organising the thing, like me, has had a few beers and doesn't really care and just is there because he wants to see his friends on a weekend and play some Magic. So I try not to be too involved. But you can tell if a player is popular or unpopular within a group. Not just our group, but any group, by... I need a game, and people look away. Yep. There's a pod over there, I think.
Right. Or there's, are you guys almost done over there? How's that game going?
Let's switch it up.
Yeah, let's switch it up after this. Right. If you start
thing.
hearing a lot of that, you kind of have to worry.
Yeah. But I think... Also, you've got to give people, at the same time, you've got to give people the benefit of the doubt when they're new.
I think you got to just give them time.
Yeah, and that's it.
Because I think most people know the path, right? You start off and you're like, I want to play, Exquisite Blood, Sanguine Bond in all my decks. And then slowly they're like, I'm kind of tired of that. I've done that. I've done Crater Hoof enough where I don't want to play that card anymore. And I think that just takes time. Like, the more time you put into the game, you realize that, I've Cyclonic Rifted, 30, 40 times.
This game.
I'm kind of... I'm kind of done with this. Yeah. Like, I can play maybe River's Rebuke and then eventually go down further. And, I'm happy at, a lower power level. Yeah. But they need to kind of taste that high power level before they're like, that's not really what I want to do anymore.
It's not just that either. Like, sometimes when people are starting to play EDH, not just joining a new group, but actually starting to play EDH, they'll gravitate towards commanders where they're very powerful, but part of the reason that they're powerful is just because they're very straightforward.
Yeah.
So your Merrens, your Atraxas. My first ever EDH deck was a Muldrotha deck, which, you know, wasn't a very good Muldrotha deck.
Okay.
I think I played 32 lands and very little ramp. It was a bad Muldrotha deck. But what was great about Muldrotha as a new player was it was so easy. It was just like, okay, I just cast this big slimy thing and then I can play anything from my graveyard. I understand that. Even for me as a player where there's a lot going on, like what does Cyclonic Rift do, you know? Yeah. And then, but I know if I get Muldrotha out, I can play that land. Right. That my Evolving Wilds, and I can sacrifice it and find something. And I think those starting commanders are like a nice place to get going. That I agree with. Like Tatiova or something like that. Yeah. You know.
And everyone has to start somewhere. Yeah. Like that's not wrong.
No.
Yeah. But here's my other question. You have many decks.
Yes.
What's the number at right
now? 26, I think. I've taken some apart recently, so it's less.
Do you think that you feel pressured to build decks from the group? Mainly because you want... No, it's just a personal thing that you enjoy.
Yeah, like...
You're comfortable with 20 plus.
Yeah, because the thing is, those 20 plus decks are all... Like, they're all quite different, I think. Or there's different decks that do different things, and they're not optimized, a lot of them. Like, I'd say out of those 26 decks, I've probably got 10 good decks.
Okay.
That I would say I would feel comfortable, like if I needed to win the game, like if my life were on the line and I had to pick a nearest deck, can I win a game with this deck? I'd give myself a 25% shot at least of winning, or 50% shot.
50 is quite high. You know, you're sitting at 25 normally, right? It's one of 4.
Oh no, a lot of my decks have never won a game, you know, and that's fine. But basically, like, I feel quite comfortable having so many decks because the decks don't have to be strong. They just have to be sort of quirky. Right. And I love that because part of my enjoyment of Magic is the brewing process, is looking at a card and thinking, how can I make that work? Like, how can that card fit into a deck? How can I manipulate a strategy? How far can I push this idea? So quite a lot of my decks, like of all my decks, none of them are in the top 100 popular EDH commanders on EDH Rec. They're all a bit obscura or less played. Yeah. But I don't feel pressure to upgrade them. And I'd take, whenever I get an idea, I'll sort of make a deck, play it a few times, and then maybe I'll upgrade it and add a few things to make it stronger or more competitive. But I never feel pressure from the group to do it. I just really enjoy it. I enjoy the brewing process.
What do you find is kind of your deck building philosophy? You've already talked about it can't be that popular. You kind of like what that commander does, and so you go ahead and do it.
Well, I wouldn't say that it can't be popular isn't something that I would consider. If a deck is popular, like then that doesn't really come into my mind. But quite often the decks that are quite popular are quite generically popular. For example, so there's nothing like Muldrotha or Atraxa in my roster now, just because they're sort of generically good. Whereas I've got a Riel deck. That's quite a popular commander. Yeah. Last I checked, it wasn't in the top 100 of EDH Rec, but it is quite a popular commander. But the reason I built that commander is because it was the perfect commander for a strategy I wanted to try out, which was using Spell Shapers. So it's a Mercadian Masques theme deck, basically. Right. And my entire philosophy behind that, in terms of a deck building process, was how can I make Spell Shapers good? And then Riel came out. And it was like, she makes them good.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Because I sit comfortably at around 8. I think 8 decks, I can continually kind of, whenever a new set comes out, I'm like, oh, that fits in there, and kind of mess with 8. Anymore, like, my head doesn't wrap around it. Like, when a new set comes out and I have 20 decks, I'm like, well, what do I buy? And I don't know. And immediately I'm like, too many decisions. I can't deal with this. And so I look at 8 and I try to look at maybe 4 at a time. And I'll bring 4 out and then I'll play with these 4, and then I'll bring the other 4 out, and I'll play with these 4. But I just can't wrap my head around that many decks. It almost like stresses me out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm similar. I don't even look at commander deck lists anymore, like the commander products. But I think one thing that maybe works for me is I play limited a lot. I draft and I play with the standard cards. And so when you're playing those games, you'll suddenly think, oh, this might go in this deck. That's actually, like, I've recently put a card from the Brothers War into my Tree and Creatures of the Forest deck.
Which card?
And it's a rubbish card.
Yeah.
But I played it in my deck the other day, and it was the All-Star. The Spider.
The spider did a lot of work for you.
It's a bad card. It should not be on anyone's EDH radar.
Right.
It's like it's a 4-drop spider, and when it comes in, you can sack one of your things, and it'll kill something.
Right.
But that deck is all about sacking things and getting something else back from the graveyard when the thing dies.
Yeah. And
it's a good ETB trigger, so if you sack the spider, you can get that back in, and then that will kill something. So I put it in I put it in for a tutor, because I have some tutors in that deck, and I wanted to take a tutor out.
Right.
So I just took a tutor out to power it down a bit and put the spider in.
Yeah.
And I was very surprised how well the spider did, because it just sacrifice a squirrel to the spider, and it'll kill any permanent on the battlefield except to land. Yeah. So, but I would never have landed on that if I didn't play limited and know how strong that card can be in limited. Like, if you see that pack 1, pick 1, you'd pick it over some rares. Yeah. Because it's so good in limited.
Right. Yeah. That's incredible.
So,
and I always tell a lot of people to go play more limited. I think it makes you a better Magic player.
Oh,
even though I don't. Like, I play very little limited, but I know how much better it makes you. Like, understanding what's good and what's not. Right.
Threat assessment. Yeah. Card evaluation.
Yeah. Right. More the card evaluation. I actually don't know a lot about threat assessment, according to you've seen me play. I don't.
Yeah, it's never me. You leave me alone.
But I enjoy watching people how people play according to personality. You know, I think that's part of why I enjoy EDH. It's not so much what you have on board; it's just who you are as a person, right? And the fact that you do something today will affect maybe your next month of games. Right? You've done something absolutely broken, and the meta remembers it. Like, the meta will remember that you comboed out after whatever. Like, you were way down and you comboed out and won. The meta will remember that for maybe a month. And to live it down and kind of reshine your reputation in the meta, I find incredibly interesting. Like, just watching, and everyone does it a little bit differently. You know, Trev will be like, I sold you that card. Don't hit me with that. Like, something along those lines, and that'll make me laugh. Like that, I enjoy watching everyone kind of politic their own way through the games. Yeah, I find it really amusing.
Yeah, I like politicking as well. Yeah. I think it's what makes EDH so interesting.
Like, I'll watch Josh kind of guilt trip people out of it, and it's hilarious. And I'm like, I don't know if it's working, Josh. Maybe
it's the 5 stages of glunch: bargaining, treasures, a card.
At some point, it's really me. Come on. But I enjoy that. Like, I enjoy watching everyone's kind of like, oh, don't hit me speech. It's part of why I enjoy EDH over something like Draft or something like Standard or Pioneer.
And I think people listening to this as well might think that we're being maybe disingenuous by saying don't hit me, but quite often people will be honest. They'll say, I probably would hit me, but here's why I don't think you should.
Yeah.
Or people are getting better now when people say what's the threat, what artifact, people will very often now say, that's probably my thing, you know. And that's good, actually, because there's nothing more annoying than people misrepresenting themselves or saying, yeah, this deck's fine, and it kills them on turn 3, or this deck is, or you know, no, leave it alone, it won't do anything, I don't have the other piece, and then they do. And that was something in our group that we had in the past, and I think we've got rid of that now, which is good.
Sure. But I also think, again, I have to at least credit some of the long-term players, right? the people that come every week and play every week, they kind of set the tone and the culture of the group. I would say.
That's fair.
Because if you have, a lot of spikes always playing every week, that's the tone that everyone is set at. Definitely. Right? So as long as you have people that come every week and kind of set a more casual tone, it usually, one, kind of weeds out people that don't fit that tone, or it forces the power level to eventually come down. Yeah. Because you just can't stay in that group if you don't. Yeah. And I enjoy that. I think that's the right, as a player in the group, I enjoy that kind of casual feel.
Yeah. And I think that we are the number one meta in the entire world for playing the coveted jewel.
For sure.
I don't think
many decks.
Any other group covets the jewel quite like the Shanghai EDH Group.
Correct. So, I guess you didn't play Magic back at home, right? You were more of a very casual player.
Yeah. So I started playing in Mercadian Masques. Kitchen table style with my dad and my two brothers, and then I didn't come. I think we stopped playing around Kamigawa, original Kamigawa, and then I didn't come back to Magic until Dominaria.
Why did you guys stop?
I think it was money. It was money. Okay. And like the price of it went up. Like went to school and university, and we just fell out of it. We played other games and things like that.
What else did you guys play? Just curious.
Video games mostly.
Me too.
And
that's what I was going to say as well. Yeah. That really killed a lot of our board gaming. Video games really killed a lot of, I guess, in-person
and also
games.
Like tennis, golf, like sports stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that in your family?
Yeah, I mean, so is diabetes, but like we did play the occasion. Like when I go back home this summer, I hope to play quite a lot of golf with my dad. I enjoy playing golf. I'm not very good, but I always enjoy it. And walking.
We're a big golf family as well, and I hate it. Like I refuse to play with them.
Really?
Yeah, they all go play, and I'm just like, I'm gonna stay home.
Okay.
I don't understand the love of golf.
Where I'm from in the north of England, though, it's not fancy.
Golf is king.
It's not fancy.
Oh.
It's not like the place we go to play. It's basically a farmer has turned one of his like field areas in the Lake District into a golf course.
Gotcha.
And we play there and we enjoy it. And we go occasionally to like...
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not... There are clubs where it's fancy, but we don't go to the fancy ones. We just go in our clogging golf shoes and go and play for a bit. Okay,
so you guys started Mercadian Masques.
Yeah.
And you've told me that it's one of your favorite sets.
I think it's my favorite set.
Really?
Of all time,
Get out of here.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why. So if you can imagine, if you will, I'll tell you why I like Mercadian Masques so much, and this might take a little while, but imagine, if you will, a 12-year-old David or so, this thin, gaunt child, I know, suspend your disbelief, walking up into Lancaster town centre, and there's this mysterious sort of Hogwartsy shop next to a kebab shop. And I can't even remember its name. But it was the local Weirdos game shop.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a friendly, welcoming game shop. It was run by a man called Peter Pinto, actual name. And you'd go inside, and inside the shop was a load of classical music playing. And there were books, weird sci-fi fantasy books, cobwebs.
Actual cobwebs.
Yeah, actual cobwebs. And he would be hiding somewhere at the back of the shop. He obviously hated his customers. And he had a few boxes of Magic cards and various things in the window to try and sort of advertise a business. No one ever went in, but one day, walking up to the shop, me and my dad went in.
Why?
Just because we were interested. We heard the classical music. We're like, what is this place?
Yeah.
It sold marbles. It sold lava lamps. It was a very strange place.
Okay.
And the owner, Peter Pinto, no social skills whatsoever. My dad's very affable, like, oh, hello, how are you? And he was like, yes, fine, thank you. Anyway, my dad, in a great attempt to make conversation, happened upon the nearest product, and it happened to be a packet of Mercadian Masques cards, and asking him what it was, and Peter Pinto said it's a strategy game. It's a bit like Pokemon. At the time, I worked on a market stall that sold Pokemon cards.
Really?
In Lancaster Market. And so I was into trading Pokemon cards with the local kids and trying to... That was my first proper job apart from a paper round.
Right.
Anyway, so my dad bought a packet of these Mercadian Masques cards, and Peter Pinter said, "Oh, the set's not as good as the last one. We've got lots of the last one here. It's Urza's Saga, Urza's Destiny." And my dad and me were like, "Yeah, we don't want any of that old crap. Let's go for this new happening set. Urza's worthless. The best decision we ever made."
Right.
And anyway, we bought a pack and we opened it up, and it was all these weird cityscapes, and there were rebels and mercenaries, and we didn't know what to do. Anyway, we bought a few. They used to have those starter decks.
Correct.
We bought a couple of those. We went home and played, and then, as you say, we were hooked. And then my dad got hooked, and we started collecting like whole sets in binders. Like slowly picking things up. Magic wasn't that expensive back then, but we liked the art, we liked the strategy. Me and my dad always used to play chess before that, so it was kind of an upgrade from chess.
Yes.
So there's a lot of nostalgia bound up in Mercadian Masques. Go forward 20 years, 22 years, I'm in Nanjing in a game store, and I've heard that there's a magic shop. I'm looking to maybe play with some people, and I hear about this new format called Commander.
Where did you hear about the magic shop from?
On a night out, drinking, bumped into someone who started talking about it. Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah. When you consider how much of an addict I am to Commander now. Anyway, so I heard about Commander, and I made a Muldroffer deck eventually after playing Brawl for a little bit. But I kept going back to thinking about the old cards I used to play with from when I was a kid, and thinking, oh, that'd be good in a Commander deck.
Yeah.
And Mercadian Masques often came up, and still does. And I think my final point on this would be to say that I think one of the reasons I like Mercadian Masques so much now still is because it's a set where you can go into it and the cards are janky. They're not obviously good, but there's so often where you can look at a card from Mercadian Masques and go, oh, that's interesting. How can I make that work?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the modern design Commander cards are kind of like, they've obviously been designed for Commander. If it says Goad on it, you know what it wants to do. If it's like, if it says something along the lines of, I don't know, go target creature, or whenever you do something, proliferate, you know what it's aiming for, you know how it fits. But Mercadian, there was just some random unplayable cards where you can look at it and be like, oh, that's interesting.
It's pretty well known that Mercadian Masques is not the most powerful set.
Correct.
I would say if you listen to a lot of the pros online, they will tell you that was a significantly unpowerful set.
Yes.
And it's not looked well upon, let's say,
Correct.
right? In fact, it's almost a meme as how bad it is. Quote, bad.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm shocked that it's your favorite set because, well, I guess I'm not shocked because I know you. But like most people would be like, oh, I don't want to play anything from Masques.
Yeah.
Because it's just not good.
Yeah.
Right? So it's incredible that you have found kind of this little niche set that you love, and everyone else is just like, no, I won't even touch it.
But it's so interesting as well how often you'll see somebody play a cool card in a deck, and then my joke, it's alwast a meme itself. I'll just say, oh, what set's that from? Oh, it's from Mercadian Masques. Because there's just so much in there that's gold if in terms of synergy, in terms of just finding the right place for it. I'll give you an example of one card. I know we probably talk about more, but Saprazan Air. It's a merfolk. It's 1 and a blue, and it's a 1/1. And it just says, whenever it's blocked, you draw 3 cards.
Correct.
That's not a very good magic card. No. And the picture of it, it's like an heiress merfolk princess sat in a nice underground sort of bedchamber, I suppose, with flowing hair. And a 1/1 for 2 mana that you draw 3 cards if it's blocked.
Right.
So everyone's going to let you hit them with it, right?
Correct.
But what about if you put it in a ninja deck?
Yeah. It's great.
Starts getting blocked then.
Yeah.
Because people start to worry about, oh, okay, well, he could get 3 cards, but otherwise I could let him hit me with a ninja.
Right.
And, of course, there are better cards than it that are unblockable 1/1s.
Yes, correct.
So
That's
why
what I
play
wanted
the
to say.
Surprisinaire? But the fact that you've chosen to play the Surprisinaire, like, there's something fun and playful about that.
Sure.
You know you could have played an unblockable 1/1, but you've chosen to play a substandard card because there's all sorts of intrigue behind it.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting choice. That's what I like about Mercadian Masques.
I have it in my Merfolk deck.
Stuff.
And the Merfolk deck is usually... It came out because Yannick told me it would be cool to see Cyber Merfolk. That was his selling point. And it was just equipping Merfolk with cool, I don't know, equipment.
Yeah.
And watching, people get hit. So I would put like a Quietus Spike on my Surprisinaire and see, well, you can lose half your life or you can let me draw 3 cards.
Yeah.
Let's see how, balance your threat assessment here.
Yeah.
And I enjoy watching people try to figure that out. That's quite a lot of fun. Whereas unblockable, you don't give your opponent an actual chance.
Also, the ninja deck is strong.
Mm-hmm.
The Eurocode deck's strong. I had one. Yes. I took it apart because it was becoming... Actually, I took it apart because it was becoming too strong for the meta.
Yeah.
And there were other people who were playing ninja decks. And I was kind of thinking, well, I'm never going to play my Eurocode deck because people don't want to face Eurocode all the time. So Correct. I'll take mine apart. It's no skin off my nose. It's done what it needed to do.
Yeah.
I put it together way before Kamigawa came back, so it was full of crap.
I don't want to stroke the ego here again, but like, that's why you're a great, I guess, person to hold on to this group. One, I don't even think you want it. Like, I don't think you actually want the responsibility. But the fact that you don't want it is probably why you're good at it. And you're...
Like Gandhi. Not near it.
A little bit. But the idea is, like, you're willing to be like, well, even though I kind of like this deck, for the sake of the group, I don't want, people don't like playing mirror matches. I'll take it apart. It's not a big deal. There's enough of this in the meta. And you're willing to consider that. Like, I sit here sometimes and I'm like, you know what our meta needs more of? X. And then I'm like, well, I'll try to build that, because I think that's what the meta needs. It's not so much what I want, but I think the meta needs X. So I will find a commander that I like that will move for X to kind of move the meta in a certain direction, and I think that's important. And I wish more people would be a little bit less selfish about, this is what I want to build, this is what I want to do, build this, big machine, and be like, well, the meta kind of also needs, maybe more interaction. It maybe needs a little bit more of X. And let's build decks that are helping the meta. I think that helps. I wish more people would think about that.
I think just sometimes as well, to thank you for the credit, but also that I do get bored of things. If things start to feel...
20 plus decks I can see.
Yeah, but if I've got a ninja deck and 2 other people have got a ninja deck, I'd rather just be playing something different.
Yeah.
And especially if other people have recently put together their ninja deck, there's a lot more novelty in that than mine.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there are some decks that are probably easier for me to take apart than others. Some decks have lasted much longer. I love my Wizards deck.
That's been there for a while.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever take that apart just because I really enjoy playing it, and I just think it's really fun. But what I do is I change out the wizards. Like, if somebody has a negative experience with a wizard, and they're like, God, that wizard's awful, I'll take it out and replace it with something
There are always
else.
more wizards.
There's always more.
Yeah.
And, they quite often as well, you can just pick a really unassuming wizard that does work. So like the Basalt Ravager from Kaldheim.
I don't know it.
3 and a red. I got it from draft, essentially, a draft card. 3 and a red, it's a giant wizard. It's a 4/2.
Okay.
When it enters, it deals damage equal to any target equal to the number of giants or wizards you have in play.
Nice.
So it just comes in and you end up doming someone for 8 and copying the trigger and doming someone else for 8. So
that's powerful.
It's a good card.
Yeah, that's a good card.
And that replaced like a very controlling wizard, for example.
That probably steals your stuff and makes people uncomfortable.
Yes. Yeah. No one likes their stuff being stealed.
So back to Masques. Aside from this nostalgia, I enjoy the power level. And I only enjoy the power level thinking about it now because of this podcast. Like, I went through the Masques set on Scryfall, and I was like, oh, I like the power level that Masques block kind of set. Cards that I wanted to bring up were the lands that have depletion counters and storage counters.
Yeah.
I actually like that as ramp. I would rather EDH be at that power level than play more cultivates.
Yeah.
The lands come in tapped.
Yeah.
You can tap them for, let's say, for 2 mana of a certain color instead of 1.
Yeah.
And if after 2 depletion counters, they're gone.
Yeah.
I like that power level. I think that if we stayed at that power level, I'd be really happy with Commander. Like, instead of all of those landfall triggers, you're constantly just dropping dual lands. That seems like the right power level to me. And storage counters, you can add more storage counters and then tap for the number of storage counters on it.
Yeah.
Like,
you can proliferate, of course.
Right. But it's quite slow. It doesn't, explode and you're like, oh man, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it seems to me like fair magic to me. I enjoy that set's type of ramp to me. Makes sense.
I mean, thinking about, I don't think ramp's the problem at all, but I think that what we're thinking about there is like the ideal game, I suppose. Right. And the ideal game is where everyone gets off to a relatively similar start. No one plows ahead.
Sure.
And there's time for everyone to develop a little bit.
Yeah.
So, very unpopular opinion, but if I were to be able to ban a card from Commander, or if we could have like a nuclear armistice, I would ask everyone to remove Sol Ring from their deck.
Sure. That's not unpopular. I think a lot of content creators have said that.
Just because it's a really good card. It's really powerful. And it does, a player having a turn 1 Sol Ring make for a better game? Not necessarily. But I'd push back against myself in that because green is so adept at ramping, you need things like Sol Ring in order for the other colours to not suffer. So, I don't know how I feel about it really, but in terms of just thinking about the perfect game is where everybody's resources are relatively matched in the developing stage of the game.
Correct.
And then the game gets to, let's say, turn 7 or 8 and things are really happening. First 3-4 turns are building up and then things start to happen, and by turn 7 things are really starting to happen and there's jeopardy. Like, for me, that's like the ideal kind of game scenario, I would say.
I would say that is coming from a more control player. As an aggro player, I would disagree. And
I don't know, because I play aggro as well. I play a fair bit of aggro, and I think that's still, like, because the thing that could be happening on turn 7 is the aggro's really going off and swinging for the fences. Like, I think that's good.
But they should also start swinging on turn 1 and turn 2.
No. Yeah, they would be.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in terms of things going off, I would mean, like, jeopardy.
Gotcha.
I'm not talking about, I attack you with 4 goblins on turn 3. That's everyone's on 40 life. That's not, nothing's happening there. It's just life totals are dwindling. But we're talking about the wound reflections out and Krenko has tapped twice, and like that's the jeopardy at that point. I
got you.
Yeah,
but I enjoy like an infect deck or two, and getting that early threat in makes me excited early, right? And it forces the control player to play a little bit more removal and not just ramp. Oh, my big thing.
Yeah. I don't like the infect deck, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
And this maybe comes back to some of the group management thing, right? You've got a player who's playing a very strong, aggressive infect deck. The strategy for the strong, aggressive infect deck is to kill people one at a time, Has to be. And then what happens is, like, say the infect deck gets off to a cracking start and kills someone.
That person's sitting there doing
sat
nothing.
there doing nothing, checking their phone, feeling like they were targeted, having a load of feel bads. It could be me, it could be someone else. And there's maybe nowhere for them to go for a bit. And all of a sudden the infect player loses momentum and it's a board stall, and it's 45 minutes before that next player plays another game. Yeah. So that's why I don't particularly like the infect deck.
I completely understand that.
if I were making an infect deck considering the needs of the group, there's a new rat infect commander, but it has toxic.
Yeah.
So if I were to build that deck, which I won't, but if I were, my thinking about it in terms of the process would be, okay, I'm an infect deck, but how do I make my deck so that everyone dies at a similar time? So it'd be a proliferate deck.
Yeah.
It'd be rats and proliferate, just so that I could hit everyone for one, get them infected, and then proliferate slowly. Just because of the considerations of people's time. They come and play on a weekend. They want to have fun. Yeah.
I understand that. And I was actually talking with Big Arthur about this. That's why Phyrexia All-Will-Be-One has the new precon. And it's more of a corrupted style thing. So you get corrupted and then, you play a little bit more control and then proliferate and get value from everyone being corrupted.
Yeah.
I like that style a little bit better because it is more of a control style infect deck, which is weird, right? Most of the time, infect will kill one person, maybe two. Yeah. And then they sit there and then they can't win. They can't close out. And that sucks. But I also play a lot of decks that only kill one person. Like I'll lich someone and I do feel bad liching them and they're stuck and they're dead. But I love doing that.
Yeah.
Like
but to be honest as well, that deck's a bit of a meme, right?
Yes. Oh,
we all have decks that do that.
Yeah.
Like I've got decks that kill one person sometimes as well.
Right.
And it happens. Like there are some things you can't avoid.
But that's why the deck or the group needs to be bigger. I think if the group was bigger, we wouldn't have this issue. Like if you had, let's say 4 tables, four pods every weekend, then you're always like, if you're out of this pod, you wait for other pods for people to die and then you make a new group. And if that rotation works, then you're fine.
Yeah.
But at 2 pods, it's quite difficult.
Yeah.
I think 4 pods is a very reasonable, you can always find a game.
Yeah.
And I think then you're more able to like target one player and be like, oh, well, there's 3 people waiting for you over there.
Yeah.
Just go play over there.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Maybe the group, well, if you're watching this and you've got friends who you think might like this kind of thing, then send them our way because we're always welcoming to new players. We all have spare decks in our bags that we can lend to people who want to give it a try, right?
Oh, I completely agree with that.
So
I think that lending decks is one of the most important things for EDH. And that's why I bring multiple decks. Like I have a lot of friends that only bring 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Right? Or like a lot of my Chinese players, they'll only bring 1. Mostly because they'll bring 1 because they only have 1 mana crypt. They have only 1,
because the power...
Correct.
Yeah.
The power's too high. It's too expensive. So they put all their power into 1 deck and they're like, this is the only deck that I brought today. And that's tough. But that's how they want to play.
It's weird, right? It's like that meta is kind of like the local meta that you hear about back home, where maybe our meta is more international and more transient and more fun-based. I don't know. Like it is. Or maybe people are trying it out from Modern, and in Modern you have your deck, and
it's very different here.
Yeah.
And it's not just. I know this is a little bit off topic, but I've found that my Magic friends here and my Magic friends are at home are so different.
Yeah.
Like, I would never put Marshall in a at-home local game shop. I would never imagine Marshall showing up in a local game shop. But for some reason, Marshall plays Magic. Okay. And Trev, Trev's quite handsome for a Magic player. Like, I would not imagine these 2 players in my local game shop, and yet here they are. Right? It's a weird thing that you go abroad and you still have these people, or you have a completely new Magic player that I don't know, that I would not imagine being at home. It was very shocking to me. So
would you put me in a Magic shop half?
I would also put myself in. So let's not be.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Never mind. I think. I don't know. Like I can imagine Jason being in my local Magic shop.
Okay.
Right. But not Marshall. Like, I would be like, what? Are you sure? It just seems so out of the blue for me. And I was like, it's just they're not just different. They're really different. Like the decks are different, the people are different. It's just a completely different crowd. So I was completely blown away when I first started playing.
Right. I must admit, I've never really thought of that so much. I suppose one of the things that I would add to it is just in terms of like LGBTQ plus representation. Like it feels like a very male straight thing.
Really?
I think so.
Magic?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it does.
I don't know.
Certainly in growing up, that was the feeling. It's like the geeky boys.
When
basically.
we were kids, for sure.
So like being gay and being in a magic group is kind of a little bit different, I suppose. But that's probably the only situation. Like for instance, we don't, and there are still barriers. Like it's mostly male group, for example.
It is. Yes.
I heard like one or two sort of quasi homophobic comments before people knew I was gay in the group. Not because people were being homophobic, but just because it's like if something's gay, it's bad, or that was a gay move or whatever. So there is that occasional undertone sometimes, or has been, but on the whole, I would say it's quite inclusive, and it's to the meta's credit that a lot of different people who maybe you wouldn't associate with a group do come and feel welcome.
Correct.
And I think it's important to be welcoming as well,
because I think we're all kind of what you would call outcasts in Shanghai. Like we're all kind of not in our home turf. We're all kind of trying to find a group, and so in a lot of ways we all kind of found each other, and I like that. Like I enjoy everyone kind of coming from a different background and being like, oh well, we all kind of love this game, why not just all play together? Like to me, that's the best part of Magic. Yeah,
it's just it's a really nice thing when you find a group that's maybe as well not related to your job or something.
Yeah.
Like I'm on a quiz team, and we're all from different industries. We just meet up once a week and go to the quiz and have a good time, and it's kind of like that with Magic. We're all in different industries with different reasons, but we come from all four corners of Shanghai to come and play in this really dodgy but quite charming bar on a I feel
like the dodgy ones
Sunday.
are all quite charming.
Yeah, it's a weird place, but we love it anyway.
Cactus is also weird.
It's a very strange place. Were you there when it was the ukulele choir and the Russian quiz night?
Yes.
Did you come for that?
I was there for the ukulele one, and that was unbelievable.
The ukulele choir was something else.
Yeah.
And they were singing that sort of "fuck you," ooh, ooh, ooh. But they were singing it like in a really wholesome,
in a very ukulele
way.
group.
Yeah, it was like
tone.
"Darn you," or something, which actually. Oh dear.
Okay. Anyways, back to Masques block because we're kind of short on time.
Okay.
What are some of your favorite cards from Masques block?
Oh, there are so many. Well, first of all, for people not familiar maybe with Masques, let's just rattle off some of the cards people will have heard of. So,
Food Chain.
Everyone's heard of Food Chain. It came from that set. Everyone's heard of Bribery.
Correct. Richard Port.
Beautiful art. That's another reason to love Masques.
Yes,
the art in
the lands in Masques, gorgeous.
Yeah. High Market. That's from That's from Masques. Everyone plays that. So you've got your famous cards that everyone knows, and there's a series of free spells that people play from there. For example,
that's right. Snuff out,
just kills
Misdirection.
anything. Yeah.
I can't think of the other one.
There's a really good white one that gives you protection from any color for free or something. Reverent Mantra, I think it's called, but you don't quote me on that. But it's in the white one. There's a cycle. But basically, some of my favourite cards from Masques block are the ones that do really silly things. So, for example...
You mentioned Spell Shapers. They all do really silly things.
Spell Shapers, Masques, and then Prophecy and Nemesis. In Masques, there were Spell Shapers where the idea is you pay a cost and you discard a card and you get an effect. So, for example, there's Waterfront Bouncer. It is a 1/1 for one.
Jacked.
He's jacked.
For a 1/1, he's jacked.
The buffest Smurf in Magic. And it is blue, discard a card, bounce a creature to a player's hand.
I think you have to tap him as well.
You have to tap it.
So that quite limits Spell Shapers because you can't do it unlimited.
Yeah.
You have to tap it.
Yeah. unless as well, and you have to discard a card.
Yeah.
So they're bad. But you get a card like Riel the Everwise coming out, which says the first time you discard each turn, draw a card. All of a sudden, that discard is just letting you filter and rummage, basically.
It's quite good.
Also, there are spell shapers that are starting to find a bit more favor from Masques block now. So Hammer Mage, I've seen in people's wish lists. It is.
Really?
Yeah. It's 1 and a red, but it has red, discard a card, destroy all artifacts of mana value X.
Ooh,
so it kills treasures.
Kills treasures, right?
Kills treasures, so people want it for that.
Yeah.
And it's a spell shaper, so that's in the Riel deck. And then after Mercadian Masques, there was Prophecy and Nemesis, and they introduced legendary spell shapers. So there's Alexi Zephyr Mage, who's basically, to all intents and purposes, Cyclonic Rift on a stick. Latulla, who's like Blaze on a stick.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
And then there's Magetta the Lion, which is a board wipe one. Greel the Mindraker, which is a discard one. And Jolrael, Empress of Beasts, which is a spike play. When somebody board wipes, you can turn all of their lands into forests.
Oh. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's mean, isn't it? We don't play that one. But spell shapers, they're great in the but they're rubbish. Like, they're objectively bad. But if you can find a way to make them work, they're really cool. And then clearly Wizards like the idea because they brought them back for the Time Spiral set a few years later with like Jaya Ballard and all those cards.
Why do you find that Masques was so reviled? There has to be more to it.
I think it's not judged through the prism of people looking at it and thinking about the format we love. Yeah. I think basically Urza's block was really broken and powerful, and a lot of people got into Magic. And much like Fallen Empires after the sets that preceded that, I can't quite remember.
Alliances or
there was some strong sets before Fallen Empires, right?
Sure.
I think a lot of people went into Masques and the power level wasn't as good and the games maybe weren't as interesting. So when people look back at Masques, they're remembering nascent draft formats. Yeah. They're remembering Constructed, where everything was like 7 mana for a 5/5 mercenary that can tutor up another mercenary. Right. For example. And I don't think there was a lot of like 1/4 blockers, and there's a lot of bad cards, a lot of unplayable standard cards or type 2 or whatever it was at the time
type
cards.
2, right.
So it fell off a cliff. So when people look back at it, they remember this awful time where they'd gone from doing broken stuff in Urza's, and then they were suddenly confronted by this really uninspiring competitive set. Whereas for us, we were like treasure sifters. We're going back as an EDH player in a casual meta, looking at these old, really quite beautiful, a lot of them, cards. And we're not looking at the 2/2 for 2s. No. Of course not. We're looking at Rishadan Pawn Shop, which is a 2 mana artifact that just simply says you can shuffle a card you control into its owner's deck. So you just steal someone's stuff.
They had a couple of those. Shuffle back in. There was that coupon. What was the coupon?
Credit voucher.
Credit voucher. Yeah. That you can shuffle your hand back into your library. Yeah. That was quite
wheel,
good as well.
An artifact wheel.
Yeah.
A lot of bad artifacts that if you were playing, like if you put the on Arena as a draft set now, Twitter would explode with malice and vengeance. But the fact is, like, if you're looking for like quirky, silly effects, then Masques is the place to look because there's so much stuff.
I really enjoyed, and I'm one of the only people I think that really enjoyed Ixalan.
Oh yeah.
I like Ixalan. I like the power level of Ixalan.
It's a really good set.
And it's reviled. It's very similar to Masques. A lot of people don't like Ixalan.
Is it?
They found Ixalan Standard incredibly boring. Yeah. They found Ixalan Draft to be quite boring.
I'd agree that it was quite... Because I said I'd come back in Dominaria, but I think I caught the tail end of Ixalan. I remember some dinosaurs.
Right. But I enjoyed dinosaurs, vampires, pirates, Memorfolk. Yeah. And I enjoyed that entire look and feel of that set. But it is reviled, very similar to Masques, as just a bad set. And people don't like the power level. They didn't like the cards. They just found it terrible. Right. But I like Elenda the Dusk Rose. I've been trying to build that deck for years. I haven't found the right feel for it. It's too easy to be too broken. So I'm still trying to find like a good power level for that deck.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that entire flavor. And I feel like I feel towards Ixalan very similar to how you feel towards Masques, is that
That's fair.
a lot of people don't like it, and yet I've found quite a few gems in this set.
Oh, for EDH, it's full of stuff. Like the... you like the dagger that gives plants away, don't you? That's a great card.
That's my favorite.
I really like Storm the Vault. The one that
all of those flip lands are great.
Yeah, super.
Yeah.
It is a really good set for EDH.
And I enjoyed that they flip, and it's kind of like looks like a treasure map. Like the entire flavor of that set I found was on point.
Yeah, and pirates are popular. Yeah, I think my only negative feeling toward Ixalan was the drafts were quite
single dimensional.
Yeah, quite uninspiring.
Yeah.
I don't think aggressive is right, because we're playing the Phyrexia draft set now, which is getting pilloried for being very aggressive.
Yes.
But I like it. I think it's a really interesting draft set. But I know that's quite an unpopular opinion. But yeah, Ixalan, I seem to remember it being, there were a lot of like hex-proof free flyers that you couldn't deal with and things like this.
No, I got you. And I understand that it was a little bit boring for a lot of people, which is fine. But for EDH, I enjoy it.
Yeah, I do. And we're going back this year, aren't we?
Yes, I hope so. I hope it'll be much better. Like, I enjoy dinosaurs in general.
Yeah. Will you be buying the collector?
Yes.
The center of the earth bundle, or whatever it'll be,
something
with
like that. We'll
dinosaur foils with like raked claws down. This is the raked claw dinosaur pirate hat edition.
Oh, I hope so. If it has dinosaurs with pirate hats on it, I'm in.
Excellent. Maybe stickers. Stickers of a pirate hat.
I'll pass on that one. But like, again, Masques also had ramp, like I said before, the ramp that I really enjoyed because it was so slow. The horn, I guess, skull, all the Ramos pieces was another thing that I really enjoyed from Masques, was that it was slow. You could tap it it was 3 mana. You can tap it for whatever color it was, but you could also then sack it again for an additional mana.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I wish more artifact ramp was that way.
Yeah.
To me, it's one turn, you can kind of ramp a little bit more ahead, but that's it. And then cut you off at that. Yeah. Instead of, arcane signets.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on board with you, Soul Ring and Arcane Signet. Just take them all out. And
I said that, but I don't know if I really mean it. I mean it. I think it would be potentially better, but at the same time as well, like, I don't. They're there, but they feel like must-haves, and I don't like the idea of a must-have.
Right.
I like the idea of 3 mana rocks with an upside to them, for sure.
I like the idea that you have now 2 additional card slots that are not set. Right? Everyone's technically playing a 97, 96 card deck.
Yeah.
And so to give you that 2 extra slots, worth it.
Yeah.
What do you think about taking all the tutors out of EDH? I just saw that on EDH Rec a while back. Taking tutors completely out of the format. Oh, it wasn't EDH Rec. It was on the Command Zone. They were talking to the professor and saying, what if we just banned all tutors?
There's a podcast that I'd recommend called Legendary Creature Podcast.
Okay.
It's really good. And they've recently got in their play group, which they refer to as Church. They call it Church.
It's ridiculous.
Because, I think they're from like Utah or somewhere, this group. And but that's like a Mormon area.
Yeah.
But they call it Church. They're not religious, but magic is their church in their group. But they did a whole episode about taking out tutors and that they don't have tutors in their deck lists anymore, and they found that it's been really rewarding. To be honest, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying we can't play tutors because they're not cheap and people have invested in them. But I very often find if I have tutors in a deck, I'll quite often use them suboptimally because I don't want to follow the same play patterns. Similarly, whenever I've had a tutor commander like the Shrines commander, I've found I've not enjoyed it because it encourages, it doesn't allow for the spontaneity that I enjoy in Magic. I enjoy looking at a board state and trying to solve a problem, then imposing my will upon a game. I enjoy the sort of the collaborative process of 4 people thinking as they go, rather than, okay, I'm going to tutor for this combo piece.
It's the whole point of having 100 card singleton is the randomness. And you are purposefully getting rid of that randomness. Well, to me, it almost ruins the spirit of the game.
But I do, in some ways, though, I do not mind tutors. Because quite often
I obviously don't either.
Yeah.
Because I play black.
Yeah. And they can solve problems. And also you can sometimes have really funny, silly tutors. Like Vincent, who's just returned back from Holland. Welcome back, Vincent, if you're watching. Probably not watching, but he might be. He messaged me a message the other day that just said, scariest tutor in Magic, and this picture, and it was Eerie Procession. Do you know what it does?
Eerie Procession do?
Eerie Procession lets you look through your deck and find any arcane spell, because he's made he's made this awesome. If you get a chance to play against it, it's Calamax, but it's all spliced into arcane.
That sounds awesome.
It's nasty.
Yeah.
Like when it gets going, it's really good. It's really funny. You have to laugh when he's murdering you. But he's got this tutor in there that's so flavorful. Same for me. In my Inala deck, I've got 2 wizard cycling tutors, just because I can find any wizard at instant speed. That's great.
Yeah, at instant speed, it's fantastic.
It can be quite flavor, but I think the moment where I go to take a tutor out is when it's like, is this demonic tutor in here for any purpose? Is there anything desperately I need to find, or have I just put it in because I know it's a good card and I've got one in my binder, and it's a good card, and quite often I'll take out that demonic tutor or whatever at that time. Yeah.
Last question before we wrap up. We recently had an issue with, I guess, with you in particular, rage quitting. But my reaction to that was mostly that it was our fault. I don't know what your take was on it, but we have some players that play at a little bit higher power level, and my reaction was that we should always prep decks that are also at that level. What do you think?
I think I would agree to an extent, and I think I will make a point of taking maybe 1 or 2 of my stronger decks.
Just to have them in the chamber.
Just to have them, even if they're not necessarily what I want to play that day, I might bring them along.
Yeah.
I've got a Recce deck, and that's quite powerful.
You've won a tournament with that, right?
Yeah, it can be quite good. So maybe I might start bringing that. But in terms of just rage quitting in principle, first of all, I don't think it's right to rage or to get annoyed or angry. I think.
Really?
Well,
I do.
I think it's healthy and it's right, but at the same time as well, you don't want to be mean. You don't want to be unwelcoming.
Correct.
So you need, like for me, I've got to tailor that, because sometimes I do just get quite annoyed by things, and I never used to get quite annoyed, but I'm getting older and grumpier as the days go by.
Me too.
What gets me, I suppose, is when there's a situation where a person's desire to win becomes more important than their respect for your time, and I struggle a bit with that. I don't like that. And similarly, I think it's fine to quit if you realise you've got no chance of winning. So if you are absolutely back to the wall and it's not even turn 3, I think it's perfectly fine to say, I'm going to scoop this because I know enough about Commander to know that this game's over. So we had a game recently where one of the players, they played a turn 1 burgeoning, and then they went first. So turn 1 burgeoning.
That's tough.
And then we all played our turn. None of us had anything explode. We all played tap lands. They dropped land for each.
Yeah.
They dropped their 5th land, and they dropped a Sylvan Library.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I just said, okay, guys, I would like to... I didn't scoop. I didn't rage quit. I actually just said, I'd like to suggest we concede this game. And here's why. And very calmly, very amicably, we all agreed, and we played a new game. And I think that's
probably the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there have been times where I've been like, rah, rah. I don't want to...
How many beers in is that?
Oh, yeah. Like, definitely. That was the same day. And the first one was like the second game before beers had been ordered. And the last one was like, I don't like children and shit.
Right.
I hate it.
I'm pretty sure it depends on the number of beers in you.
Yeah, for me. For me, possibly.
But I'm with you on this. I actually think that quitting's not wrong, right? You have to respect your own time. Otherwise, other people won't. So if you find that, this is kind of a waste of my time, I get it.
Also, I've had people not rage quit against me, but they've clearly been really annoyed and wanted to quit. And actually, if I get into a position where I'm confident I'll win, I'll say, do you want to just concede and play a new one?
I think that's right too.
And just because I want to have respect for their time, I know I've got a lock. I know I've got 3 counter spells in hand.
Yeah.
And an evil glint in my eye. And there's no way that wizard's dying.
Right.
So I'll just sort of say, and quite often that's fine or whatever. And also it's important to mention that one of the things that we can do better is to quit, but to do it amicably, and that's something I can do better. Because there've been some times where I've had a little sort of childish tantrum where when I leave at the end of the day, I'm like, David, you're 37 years old.
Why are you still doing this?
And you're pretending to be a fucking wizard. And you got annoyed with... So what are you... you need to apologise, And I usually feel a degree of shame and then laugh at myself.
Yeah.
And I always try to be nice. But yeah, we all have our moments, don't we? And I think that rage quitting... Like if you can do it in a nice way, and not even rage quit. If you just concede, if we talk about concession, I think it's fine to concede.
I don't even mind the rage quitting. I think sometimes you just got to let that out. Otherwise, it sits inside you, and you just get angrier and angrier, and then you quit the group. I think that's worse.
Well, it's important as well that to stress that you're never annoyed at the person. You're annoyed at the situation. And like you play on Arena, if you're being absolutely... there's a button you can concede and your head explodes like on Arena. Say, I'm done. You can't do that in real life. But you can concede and go, look, I just don't think I can win this.
Right.
But because maybe Magic is Commander is an interpersonal, collaborative sort of 4-player game where people are bringing themselves. Like, I think sometimes if you rage quit, some people will see it as being against the person rather than the situation, and I'm always keen to stress it's about a situation, because the people are fantastic. I love our group; it's lovely, and new people are always very welcome, and we should try to make them feel welcome and be nice. But also, what you're saying is damn right. We shouldn't pretend that everything's milk and honey when you're not having a very nice time.
I agree.
And also, that kind of feedback can help inform people's decks. I no longer play the Galecaster Colossus in my wizard deck because somebody hated it, and they were very honest about hating it and how dreadful it made the game. So it's out. I've changed the deck because of that, and that's good feedback, right?
I think so too. I
think
think
you want to have a good game, not win. You want to have a good game.
But I remember that time just being, because I remember Jose had wanted to play it previous 2 games, and he was like, can I play Shieldred? And I was like, that's probably not great against this right now. And so he put it aside, picked up a new deck, and then asked again. And so at that point I was like, I get that you really want to play this deck. And to me, I was like, man, all right, if you really want to play this deck, I'm kind of underprepared for this deck, but we'll try our best. But I felt that he really just wanted to play that deck, whether it's new, whether he had just wanted to get that deck a rep. And so we all have that feeling, right?
Yeah,
we all have that. I want to play this deck, and I really just want to get it out and see what it does.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's fair.
I think for us, if we can just be more prepared for a wide variety of decks, is usually probably not wrong.
And also maybe once in a while be willing to die.
Yes.
And smile about it and go, oh, that was good.
I don't know about that. Or we just, every once in a while we need to pull Yiming back from Hangzhou and be like,
as a lesson.
Save us.
As a lesson. As a lesson to us all.
Right. All right. We're a little bit over an hour.
Wow, that's
David,
quick.
Tell everybody where to find us and when we usually play.
Yes. So Shanghai EDH Group, and indeed the Shanghai Limited Group, if you want to play Limited or you want to play EDH. We're on WeChat, you could ask about us, and I'm sure someone will direct you there.
Yep.
But if you just want to come along and have a game, then it is usually on a Sunday about noon onwards when Cactus opens. And just say, oh, hello, I've come to play Magic, and we will find you someone to play with.
Mm-hmm.
And
what about the limited group?
Limited group.
I think it's on Saturdays, right?
It varies. It's more infrequent because
Okay.
there's a money outlay there, right?
Yeah.
And not everyone wants to play sets, and you have to get a certain number of players to agree.
Mm-hmm.
But it's usually once every couple of weeks or so for limited,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe once a month. That is less easy to navigate because we usually play at different places. But if you join the EDH group, we can put you in the WeChat group.
Correct.
Quite happily.
Yep. Okay. I will put all of that in the description, and I hope we get some new players. All right, everyone. Thank you very much.
Yeah. We won't kill you.
We won't rage quit on you. I promise.
Yeah.
I promise nothing. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Do 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 do.